A lot of times, especially as like a Black female editor, you're not taken seriously. You're not always, people look at you and they're like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's just here. It's just a diversity hire.
What I'd like to go is a little bit deeper into your own personal story when it comes to people making assumptions about you as only or just a Black female editor. So I know that you've got at least one, if not more, stories about trying to get hired on projects where you certainly felt like you've got to put in a lot more effort and prove yourself a lot more to get the same kind of a job against people with the same level of experience. So let's talk a little bit more about those realities.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that thread is a good segue into it because I think a lot of people were shocked at some of the reactions there. And I think all the Black editors in that group were not shocked at all because we've kind of faced this, I think, over the years. And, a lot of times, especially as like a Black female editor, you're not taken seriously. You're not always, people look at you and they're like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's just here. It's just a diversity hire. It's just whatever. Like one of my first projects that I ever cut on, I won't say what it's called, but it was, there were like 5 older white male editors. I think 5 older male editors, but basically one of them said to me like, oh, a Black woman could never cut this show. Right. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Why? Like what, why? So it basically was just like a season of me trying to prove myself to all of these editors. And eventually at the end, for whatever reason, they were all let go. And I was the only one that was left on the project. And I like finished out that whole season. So I was like, I guess a Black woman can cut this show. But
I think what he meant to say is only a Black woman editor will survive this show. Maybe he just got it wrong. He got the wrong memo.
Yeah, semantics. But it's, stuff like that. There's constantly like weird comments like that or little microaggressions like that, where it's like, you're just there to try to do your job and you're not, not looked at as someone who can do it necessarily. I've had a lot of,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've had a lot of like interviews, especially recently, where it's like, you'll do the interview's great. You get along really well with the people. And then they, like I had one in particular that reached out to like, I think it was 15 contacts of mine that I've worked with over the past like 5 years. Like they reached out to every producer, every post-producer, they reached out to my cousin because we worked on something together. They reached out to like an old boss that I had in like 2008 just to ask if I like know how to edit, if I'm like decent at editing, right? Which in itself is just insulting because it's like, I have a resume that shows that I know how to edit, right? Like I've been doing this for a very long time. It's not like it's something that's new for me. And I found out that the other editors on that project did not have all their contacts called. They did not have to like prove themselves in every possible way. There's also ones where it's like, oh, we would like to see a copy of like this project that you worked on that's not out yet. And the only way we'll consider you is if you like show that, send all of these sorts of like clips of things that you shouldn't be sending. And there's just a lot of sort of like hoops that I feel like you have to jump through as like a Black editor. Even now, after this whole dialogue has happened, it's something that I think is still kind of plaguing this industry in a way. And it's not even, I don't think it's like in an intentional way. It's just something that's sort of like drummed into people's minds. Maybe it's like a stereotype or just I don't know. But it's definitely frustrating. I've talked to other people as well recently who said like, they'll get to like a certain stage of the interview process and then won't get hired, but someone else will, just so that like the studio can say they talked to diverse candidates, So it's like, even though it's part of the conversation, I think people are still looking at it as like an optics thing, right? Where it's just like, we have this person, not necessarily caring about their perspectives or their nuance, like we were talking about, that they might bring to a project. It's more just like, here we have at least one, So it's a work in progress. I mean, I think it's slowly getting there, but I think when studios start to understand like why it's important to have us, not that, you know, for visibility's sake they should have us, but the fact that we can actually bring things to projects. I think
and that's one of the reasons I wanted to be able to have this kind of conversation on the record, is that it's not about, well, this is a burden, but we now have to do it, you know, because of politics. All right, so let's just do the thing, versus, wait, you mean this is actually going to make our projects even better? Well, then why wouldn't we do it? I think that's the component that maybe just hasn't sunk in yet. It started with, and you would be able to speak to this a lot more than I would, but from my perspective, just general outside perspective, is it started with, yeah, well, you know, we don't really need diversity. Like, you know, white guys have been dealing with this for decades. We got it all figured out. All right, I know we should be doing this, but there's just not enough time. And frankly, all the best candidates are just white males. I'm sorry. Those are just the people that are coming onto my desk. There's nothing I can do about it. Two, all right, fine. We'll interview the candidates. We have to meet our diversity interviewing quotas, and there are going to be a few quote unquote token hires. I feel like we've at least made it that far, and maybe we're starting to edge towards maybe there's actually value in this, and I just never saw it before. I don't think that that's stuck yet, but I think conversations like this are helping to move us closer to that part of this never-ending spectrum. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, I've been lucky enough, like the past few projects I've worked on, I feel like I've been lucky enough to have EPs who understand like the value and importance of these kinds of conversations and why it's important to have us. So it is, I do feel like change is happening. It's just maybe slower than it should be, but it is getting there.